Yay.
Hey, we're live. I'd like to welcome everyone to another episode of Heart to Heart with Bree. Tonight's guest is Renee Swindle. Renee, would you please introduce yourself to the viewers?
Hi, I'm Renee Swindle. I'm the author of 4 novels now. Please, please, please. Shake Down the Stars, Pinch a Boo La La, and then the latest is Francine, Spectacular Crash and Burn.
And
Yeah,
I
and
have to
Bree was
share with the
also
viewers. I have to
good.
share with the viewers how I met you. I met Renee. It has to be about 20 years ago, if not a little longer. I can't believe it's been that long. When you wrote Please, Please, Please. And
Mm.
I had joined Yahoo Clubs. That's to show you how far back this goes. And I started a book club. And
uh,
Renee mentioned her book, Please, 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 which I love that book. I really enjoyed that book, and you did the honor of joining us the night that we shared on the book. And recently Renee just came to mind, and I'm saying to myself, I wonder whatever happened to Renee. And I looked her up on Facebook, and I sent her a message, and I was saying to myself, I hope that Renee will respond. And you did.
of
You
course.
did. It was just so exciting, and to know that you were still writing. And I tell you, Francine Spectacular Crash and Burn. I was sharing with Renee earlier that this book really helped me a great deal on my healing journey.
Mm,
It helped me through the grieving process, which, those who watch my show, that my eldest child died from an asthma attack. Reading this book, I felt like I wish I had grieved like I did while reading the book. So
mm,
it's like it took me through the journey that I didn't take in the grieving process. I was able to acknowledge some really deep feelings. I was able to connect with Francine's character. As I told you earlier, I found myself yelling at her at times, but I could really resonate with a lot of things that she was going through. I could understand and relate to her pain, and
mm,
the things that would seem crazy to the average person.
mm,
For me, I got it
mm,
because I had been in that crazy place myself. So I could truly relate to that. So, Renee, I am
mm,
just so
mhm,
excited. And I have to say that, you covered so many issues in this book. You covered codependency, grieving, agoraphobia, mental health, bullying, autism, trauma
oh
bonding,
my
just
gosh.
to name a few. Why was it important for you to address these issues?
I didn't set out necessarily to write about all those issues. I think it's like one thing connects to another, like Francine's severe codependency on her mother attributed to her choices and the way that she grieved, when she tried her mom's drugs or
Yes.
just completely, like you had mentioned, she was like holding crystals and just not in herself at all. And then her mother's agoraphobia caused Francine to completely be, again, the codependency where she didn't have a childhood because she was so busy looking after her mother.
Yes.
So it's like all these issues it just sort of, spooled out as I wrote. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to write about this check, and this check. It's just life, and how our issues connect with each other,
That
connect to
is so amazing. Honestly, that is so amazing because as I'm reading, I'm saying to myself, Renee did a lot of research on this book. Honestly, because all these issues connecting, and like I said, I could just relate to so many things in this book, this journey of healing, the vulnerability, all these things, So I have to ask you, why did you write this book?
I wish I had a profound answer. I only have one idea at a time when I write. Like some people are like, "Oh, I write poetry," and "Oh, I'm working on two novels," and blah, blah, blah. I just get like the one idea, and so if I get an idea, I'm gonna like hang on to it. And so I was walking my dogs around Pixar Studios because we happen to live near Pixar, and I had already finished my last book. I didn't have any idea or anything, but I was walking my dogs, and then I had this image of this young woman who was stalking someone, and next to her in the car was this kid who kept talking about Pixar cartoons. And I was just like, that's really interesting. Who is this woman and who is this kid? And so I started writing, and I wrote a really not a very good draft. It wasn't coming. But then I thought, well, why is she stalking this person? It's kind of like what we'd been sort of chatting about earlier, or when I was looking at some of the things you were thinking about asking. It's not necessarily for me when I see someone doing something, odd or horrific or whatever. I always go back to the why. Like what happened to the person.
Yes.
You know what I
Yes.
mean? It's what happened. And so instead of doing all this stalking thing, whatever I was doing, I thought, well, what would lead her to do that? And then I went back to her childhood, and it just started flowing from that point. Her mother with agoraphobia. And then that
Yes.
led to, well, who is the kid? Oh, he's the neighbor's kid and he's in foster care. And it just started coming out naturally after that.
You know
Yeah.
what? I tell you, I'd like to welcome my friend Mikey. Go, Mikey. Thank you so much for tuning in. You
Hey,
know,
Mike.
the more I got to know Francine through reading the book, I felt it was I was able to connect with her more, and have I read this book with so much empathy,
Mhm.
because I had so much empathy for her as I connected with her, as you developed her character throughout the book. It's like all the trauma that she went through as a kid, what she had to do as far as taking care of her mother.
Mhm.
I just thought to myself, kids are cruel. And just
Mhm.
the thought of going to school and, being told, oh, your mother's a witch, your mother's a witch, or, being called mud face,
Mhm.
being critiqued, being criticized for the color of your
Mhm.
skin.
Mhm.
All these things so painful.
Mhm.
And, then to go home and then
Mhm.
have to deal with her mom. The poor kid never got a break.
It's true. It's true. It's true. And I think her mom meant well. I think her mom loved her.
Yes,
And her mom had her own trauma that she couldn't get over to love, in the way that Francine needed to be loved. So it's just like,
that's the sad thing, because I wondered, like with her aunt,
mm,
subconsciously, what did she say to her sister when as she was raising her, a kid raising a kid? Did she
right.
always remind her, I've lost my childhood because I'm here taking care of you? So I think that could have played a role, and as
Hmm.
I read the book, because at first I didn't like Aunt Leanne, but as the book went on, I could see that she was a good person, but she herself, trauma is something else.
Trauma is,
I
yeah,
mean, it's
yeah,
something,
it's
reading
something.
this book, that's what I took from it. Like, we have to deal with our trauma. I mean,
That's
what's your
it.
opinion?
That's it. That's it. And it's true. It's because it's like Aunt Leanne probably never hit the mother or anything like that.
Right.
But that sort of biting, like, that the person doesn't like you on a certain level because Aunt Leanne,
Yes.
as you're so right, that she was just resentful because she was robbed of a childhood. And
Yes.
what does Francine mother do? She robs Francine of a
Over
child.
childhood.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. And it's
Exactly.
like if you don't heal that issue, you pass it on in one way or the other.
It's
You know?
true.
Yeah. So
It's so true.
yeah. So I was really looking at like I think of course, our heart goes out to those who are bullied, of course.
Yes.
But again, I'm always like, what about those who bully? like how you found empathy for Aunt Leanne. I found empathy for Aunt Leanne and Jeanette, and
Yes.
because there are issues there that cause that. No little baby is born, "Hey, I'm gonna be a bully," that
That's
just
that
doesn't
that
work
is so
like
true. I mean, that is so true, which leads to Francine, you know she's contemplating suicide, and then she meets Davy,
that.
and it's like that was her big turnaround. I think she found a sense of purpose in Davy. Was that intentional on your part?
I love that you say that. I agree. I think initially, for whatever reason, because Davy doesn't have a filter where he can lie or manipulate. And I think Francine has been manipulated for so long that lack of filter that Davy has disarmed her, and she could trust him and be herself. Because they would just sit around and
Yeah.
crackers and watch their documentaries or whatever. They didn't need to talk to each other. There was just a nice vibe. There was just a comfortability, even though he's just a kid. And then over time, for sure, she came to protect him. And I
Yes.
think that leads to the whole check thing, and slowly
Right.
over time, that love that she developed helped heal her.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
and I love the fact, like, I love documentaries. So that was another thing I had to like about her, that she was willing to sit with this kid.
Mm,
And I think, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but she didn't have that protector as a child. She
mm,
felt the need to do for Davy what no one did for her.
mhm, mhm. And I think she even says that at some point. I will do
Yeah.
for him. Yeah. Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I'm just thinking out loud. That's growth on her part when you consider the way she was at the beginning of the book.
Yes.
She's so
Because wow.
yeah, she's so used to being beaten down on, for her to stand up
Yeah.
to the bully and all of that.
Yeah, because once Davy comes into the picture, and what I like about her character, the average person I think would have walked away from Davy with him being autistic,
Mhm,
because it was a challenge, because he would tell her, "Don't touch me. I don't like to be touched," when she simply wanted to hug him,
mhm.
but I think she respected his boundaries, and I think that she learned to connect with him in a way that was comfortable for him, and I like that about her because she respected those boundaries.
That's true. That's true. I hadn't thought of that like that, but it's very true. And it's kind of like that saying, meet people where they are,
Yes.
you know?
Yes.
And I think he
Yes.
met I think Davy meets everyone where they are, which is
Yes.
what's special about him.
I love his character, and it was just beautiful to see how that relationship developed between
Mm,
he and Francine. Because I think he knew from the beginning that's who he was meant to be with. He felt safe with her. He didn't maybe didn't know how to articulate that, but I just love the way that over time, she was willing to do anything to
mhm,
keep that relationship going.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, yeah. And I could see, like, she was thinking, I'm too young and all of this, but some things are just meant to be, and I just felt like they were meant to be together.
Yes,
And
yes. I
it was
mean,
a nice and
definitely.
sound family.
Yes, yes. So, I want to talk about Aunt Leanne. I
Mm.
wrote down well intentioned, but always finding a way to offend and say hurtful things. Listeners,
Ooh.
and so we dressed it, the
Ooh.
underlying resentment on her part, that she had to be a mother. You know, let's talk about the Aunt Leannes of the world. Well
Mm,
intentioned, well
mm,
intentioned, but
mm.
they do more harm than good. It's not their intention to harm or to hurt someone's feelings, but they don't stop. And, there's no filter there. They just say whatever comes to mind. Let's talk about Aunt
And it's
Leanne.
often hurtful too. And like
Yes,
you say, they don't mean it, but it hurts. There's bite. It
yes,
sounds like some bite or some side eye or some just a sense of I don't see you. I don't
Yes.
appreciate you, even though you know they love you. It's the weirdest thing.
Which is sad because I remember when she addressed, like, basically she's saying to her sister, look at what you're doing, but look at me. I'm a successful hairdresser. I did this. This is where I started. So for those who like to, when you see yourself as a standard, I think that's a dangerous thing.
Ooh,
you know, look at me.
ooh.
Why aren't you more like me? Like, I'm a success here. And look at you. You're at home doing these stupid videos. That's not what she said, but that's what she was
Yeah, yeah,
insinuating. So,
yeah.
like, what's your take on that? Because I love how you portrayed this character of Aunt Leanne, and I love how you balanced her out with Uncle CJ
Mm,
because he was kinder, he was gentler. So I think that was a great balance in the dynamic of that relationship because Aunt Leanne was pretty harsh, but he was the opposite.
do
Was
you
that
find
intentional on your part?
I don't necessarily write with intentions. I hadn't thought of Uncle CJ that way. I just knew he was a kind person.
Yes.
But now that I'm listening to you, don't you find that an Aunt Leanne type is usually married to a quiet
It's
Uncle
true. It's
CJ
true.
type,
It's
right?
true. It's
Right?
true.
Like
It's
what
true.
what's up with that? What's up with
It's
that? You tell
true.
me. What are your thoughts? What is up with that?
I'm wondering if this is someone that I can control, that I'll be able to put him in his place if he needs to be. I don't need a man that's going to tell me to shut up or tell me what to do. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, because sometimes the Uncle CJs, I really like Uncle CJ.
Yeah,
As
lovely
I said,
guy.
yeah, I think he's a really genuinely good person. But like that type can often be enabling because
Yes,
because they allow the Aunt Leannes of the world to bully in a sense.
it's
They
true.
don't say anything and they seem like the good guy, but they're enabling
It's
that
that
behavior.
that
Yeah.
that is the truth. It makes me wonder what was his life like at home with Aunt Leanne.
Mm,
Because if she
mm,
bullied everyone else, you
mm,
know, how
mm.
what was his life like at home? Because if he had empathy for Francina, for her mom.
He
You
did.
I felt his empathy for
Yeah,
them.
yeah,
Really nice guy. Love his character.
yeah. And I think Aunt Leanne respects him enough that when
Yeah.
he is at his limit, he will listen to her. And I
Yes.
think in my imagination, he convinced her you really need to get things right with Francine and
I
stop.
think so too. I believe that's what
Yeah.
those
Oh,
were
I'm glad.
those
I'm
were
glad.
my thoughts
Oh,
exactly. Those were exactly my
good. Okay,
thoughts.
good. Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So now I have to say my biggest take from this novel was not to judge others, not to condemn, always try to be supportive and understanding. I mean, when you were writing about these characters, did you have that underlying message in mind as you wrote it?
Yeah, I think because that's the way I'm trying to live. And I wanted readers, I just always, because I had to wake up really early. I still wake up early because I'm just used to it now, but I had to wake up really early to write before I went to teach. And sometimes I'd only get 30 minutes, sometimes an hour. And the only thing that was sort of keeping me going was just thinking about some reader who felt alone or felt not seen, or who I just wanted to say, be kind to yourself. Life
Yes.
is so hard. And I just hate the thought, and maybe it's because I was working with so many students, they beat themselves up so much. And just being with constantly in your head, letting your mind put you down is it's I don't know. I just wanted it was just kind of like a letter of like, yeah, like what you're saying. Be
That's
kind.
exactly what I felt as
Oh,
I read it.
oh,
Honestly, I told you I
wow.
cried throughout reading this book
Wow.
because you know, Francine, and we'll talk about her vulnerability. You know, I found myself like looking back at my life at those vulnerable points, the points where I felt really, really, really lost. I've never felt so misunderstood in my entire life. And
Mm,
I can honestly look back and say, I do believe I had a mental breakdown.
mm,
And it felt like it was such a burden to carry because I just did not know how to get my pain across. I'd like to welcome my friend Karen. Thank you so much for tuning in, Karen. I just did not know how to get, I didn't want any pity parties. I didn't want anyone to feel sorry for
mm,
me. But what I wanted was some understanding. I wanted some understanding. And I don't think a lot of people, hello, Angie, thank you so much for tuning in. I don't think they really got it, but I think that that's what helped me to really connect with Francine because when I think back to her with the altar that her mom had, the crystals, and she didn't believe in any of that stuff, but she loved her mother. So
mm,
she did not want to get rid of any of those
mm,
items.
mm,
I mean, when Aunt Francine, as well intentioned as she was, just
mhm,
ready to just, hey, let's just throw it all out. Let's just throw it all out.
mhm.
So as when you wrote about that whole, you know, what was the point that you were trying to get across to the reader?
Well, I try to just kind of stay in the scene and just be honest. It's kind of like I'm Aunt Leanne in the scene when I'm writing it. I'm Uncle CJ. I'm Francine, and I'm just sort of in the scene. But listening to you, to me, it's like you can't take anyone's pain away
You
anyway, as much
can't.
as y'all want to. But I think it's like people want to be heard. Like if we can just listen, that can
Yes,
go a long way.
I
A long
agree.
way. And
I
so if
agree.
in a different world, if Aunt Leanne would have just sat down on the couch with Francine and listened,
Yes.
had a whole different,
Yes.
right?
Yes,
Right?
I totally agree because
Something?
I was thinking the same thing. And as I told you throughout reading the book, I found myself yelling at Francine, like reading that part because I remember when I cleared my son's room out. And I did it because I was forcing myself to accept that he was gone. Like
Mm,
I didn't want to like try to tell myself, okay, he's coming back. So
mm,
I want to say it was maybe about 2 weeks after his passing that
mm,
I went in his room, and what I would do before going to work every day, I would take a half an hour to an hour, go through his things. And my son was a writer and he
mm,
would write all the time. So he was very untidy and there were a lot of pieces of paper all over the
mm.
floor, but I picked up every piece and read them because I didn't want to throw away anything that might have some significant meaning to me. So it was time consuming, but I wish I hadn't gone through that process alone. So I
Mm.
could see the good intentions of Aunt Leanne, but like you said, if she would have just taken the time to sit and reason with her niece, because she didn't like that stuff anyway, but it
Right.
was her trying to hold on to the connection of her mother.
And you have to honor where a person is, like we were saying earlier, anyway. So if that's what she needed to do, if she needed to keep that altar up for 10 years, that's what she
Exactly.
needed to do.
Exactly, exactly. And would you agree that Francine knew that others saw it as weird, but she was more intent on carrying on her mother's memory and holding on to her mom's memory? She didn't care how it looked to others.
Yeah. Yeah, because she couldn't even hide it when knowing that Jeanette and her son were coming over, which,
Yeah.
you know, she just couldn't do it. So yeah, she wanted to honor her mother above all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she was definitely holding on to her mom. I'd like to say hello to my friend Stephanie. Thank you so much for tuning in. I love how you addressed her mom's agoraphobia. And I'd like to, did you choose to address this anxiety disorder intentionally? I mean,
I don't know where that some things in the book just came to me. I have, like I said, I wanted to know why she would be stalking someone, which never even came into
yes,
the version at all. And then it was like there was the opening chapter where she was like saying my mother had agoraphobia, and it was like she was talking to me, and I just let her sort of riff. So I don't know exactly where that came from, to be honest. And Davy being autistic, I don't know where that came from. And his voice would always just come out easy. Like I would just always knew what he'd say.
he was
So
a very, very interesting character. Very interesting character. You know, there are some, like, for some people, they wouldn't get a kick out of reading about an autistic kid. But
mm,
this kid, you could tell he was very intelligent. You know, I definitely connected with him on that. But you could also tell that he was hurting. He
mm,
was going through a lot. He
mm,
didn't want to be living where he was, but he had no choice. You know, so I would like to say to the viewers, if you take the time to read this book, now for some people it might be a little too spicy. I will say that right now. But I will say that
mhm.
I read it with an open mind,
Thank you.
and I read it, you know, because right away from that first chapter, I was crying. And
Mm,
I just looked at the big picture, and I could really, it felt like a journey that I was supposed to go on, you
mm,
know? So
mm,
I like how you address, you know, therapy, because I think that was another thing. Davy was a great thing in her life, but therapy,
mm,
her going to therapy was a big thing for her. And you could really see how it helped her to grow and to start standing up for herself. So I want you to address that with the viewers. How important is therapy? I'm so glad you addressed it in the book.
yeah, I because it's helped me so much. I had many years of therapy in my 30s, and then there was some work stuff going on, and I had to go back to therapy. I thought I was like, I'm great. I'm
Yeah.
fine. It got bad enough that I was like, wow, I need to seek some help. And I think what's different, I don't know if people understand, like you think, well, I have my friends, or whatever to talk to or whatever. But a therapist, I think, um gives this view from way up top where you're like in the trees, but the therapist, I don't know how they do it, they can see, oh, there's this pattern here, like, have you noticed this connection between this and this
Yeah.
and whatever, just like, what? And then everything changes. You just see, I with me, when I was in one session, it was like I looked back on my past and saw completely different, and it helped explain
Yes.
relationships, you know it can be extremely helpful, extremely helpful.
Very, very helpful. It can be a draining process.
Yes. Yeah,
Takes a
very
lot out of
hard.
you
Yeah. Yes. I'm
mentally.
glad you said that. It ain't easy.
No, no, it's not. It's definitely not. I mean, going through a divorce and going through the death of my son all in the same year,
Mhm,
therapy is what saved me. But I will say this, like for me as a Christian, like my spiritual belief
mm,
along with therapy, it was
mm.
like a perfect marriage, you
Yes,
know,
I get
because that really, 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 really helped me. So I have to, like, we talked about the altar, the crystals.
mm,
I know for some readers that would
mm,
make them feel uncomfortable.
that's
But
true.
as I read that, I said to myself, you know, I don't want to judge this young woman because it's not like she believes in this stuff, but it's her connection to her mother.
Mhm,
And she said it from the beginning of the book, like she didn't get it, but she loved her mom. So she was there to support her mom in her craziness. They were codependent. I
mm,
mean, you, I'm
mhm.
telling you, you helped me to look at codependency.
A whole new level, right? Uh,
Because that relationship was, I mean, it was toxic in some ways, but you could see that the love was there. But
yeah.
you gave me a great, when I'm reading a book, I have to say this, Renee, if I start to visualize the characters and I'm visualizing the whole environment, you've got me. And
Mm.
throughout this book, I was visualizing the altar,
Oh,
the
right.
whole the fox, you know. And I
The
remember being
box,
freaked out by that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you know.
right?
But then it's like I had to remember I can't judge this young woman. She's holding on to this stuff because it's her connection to her mother, right? It's her connection to her mother, and she's lost without her mom right now. She even missed her aunt, but she knew that she wasn't ready to deal with her aunt at that moment. So I
Yeah.
would like you to address that. It's like, how can I put it? Meeting people where they are, as we
Mhm.
spoke about that earlier, and
Mhm.
not coming to people with our judgment and condemnation, but with some love and understanding.
Because everyone is not you. Everyone hasn't lived your life, so it's kind of like, um, take the mom for instance. That altar and those crystals were everything to her.
Yes,
Who they were helping her for where she was at, for whatever reason, all those things, all that paraphernalia was helping her. So it's kind of like you're saying, and as I'm writing it, who am I to judge? That's where
right,
she was at the time, with
right,
crystals and all of that. And Davy, he loved that. He called it Hello, Mr. Fox. He loved that taxidermy fox. He loved,
right,
there was no judgment.
right, right,
And
right.
in a way, it's kind of like I wish we could all like have that sense of not judging people, like you're saying.
Right, right. Because I'm not lying to you. Reading about her putting her mom's ashes in the cookie jar, and I'm saying
Yeah.
to myself, okay, this is a person that's at a very low point in life, very low point.
He was
And the
out of
fact,
it.
right, and the fact that she didn't contact her aunt and her
Mhm.
uncle, she just did it. I'm like, okay, this is a young lady that is really lost right now. So I would like you to talk to the viewers about that. I mean, it could have gone another way, like you said, if Aunt Leanne had just taken the time to sit and talk with her instead of coming in with a trash bag and, okay, time to clear
Just
away
get
this
rid of
stuff,
everything.
So yeah, talk to the viewers about that.
Well, it's kind of like people being on their own journeys. Again, it's like Francine, all she didn't have any friends. She just went to
None.
work and came home and looked after her mother. So to lose her mother without any warning, even,
Yes.
she was, like you're saying, completely lost. So I don't know how anyone can judge that. And we're all on our own journeys too. No matter
Yes.
what they look like on the outside, we are all on our own journeys and we all suffer in one way or the other.
It's true. It's
Everyone, you
true.
don't escape life without suffering on one level or the other.
It's true.
So to me, it's about, like you were saying earlier, empathy. Empathy goes a long way. You don't have
I
to like
agree.
it, but we're all, humans in this human experience. And what else is there to do but try to be kind to each other? And like
I agree.
listening, I think listening is a lost. I
And it's
think
it's so powerful. Think
it
about it, because
is.
Aunt Leanne not listening to her, it did a lot of damage. You
Yeah,
know, did a
yeah,
lot of damage.
yeah, yeah. And when she was with Jeanette didn't listen. And
Yeah.
people not listening, I don't know, it can go a long way to just be with someone.
It's true. So, I think with Francine, like the bullying that she experienced as a child, and then even into her adult life, still being bullied. I think back to when she connects with Jeanette and her other former classmate, and they're calling her Mudface. And I'm saying to myself, why would you think that's okay? You're no longer kids, you're no longer in school. You know, to me, that was very disrespectful. So, I'd like you to address how traumatizing bullying is, because I think for Francine, until therapy, it was almost like she was a professional victim.
Mm. Yeah, and I think it's like if you're carrying anger and resentment and you've been bullied, it's like they say it's like when you're bullied, you're either going to act it out on someone else, like some of the characters in the book, or you're going to internalize it, like Francine.
Yes.
So that cattiness that was coming from Jeanette and the classmate, they've been bullied, they've been harmed. They only know to lash out with that. Francine only knows how to take it in and bully herself in a sense. So
Yes.
that's why I was trying to like, I had Francine go to therapy, like get help if you need it, because it's going to come out one way or the other. You're either going to internalize it or you're going to lash out. It's
Yes.
dangerous that
Yes. Yes, I was so happy for her because you could
way.
definitely see the turnaround in her life come in. And, I had that's leading me to the check incident,
Mm,
so I don't want to give away too much about the book. But the check incident, that was like a foreshadowing of the bad things to come, in my opinion.
mm.
I remember yelling to myself, like yelling to her, don't write the check. you know, so I like how you put this into it's like to me you set it up perfectly
Oh,
for
good.
for me, like what was to come. But what I felt so sad about was in her vulnerability. There was to me like almost a desperation to be loved.
Mm,
It's like I just want to be with someone. And the thing is, she knew that she was being used. At some point it had to sink in. I'm being used here. But
mhm.
she just wanted to connect with someone. So please address that, because I think I look back on my younger self sometimes and
Right?
it's like, what the heck was wrong with you, Bridget?
That
That's
was
what I
sweet.
say to myself.
That's what made it really easy to write those scenes. It's like, oh yeah, yeah, that lack of self-love, you just
Yeah.
will go with that person you should not be going with, and
Yes.
all the things, it just leads you down
Yes.
a path of, because self-love is everything, and a genuine sense of self-love.
Genuine. I think that was the beginning of her starting to have that for herself,
Yeah.
because the fact that she questioned it, it wasn't like the previous times where, here, I'll pay for this, I'll do that. She questioned it. So I think at that point, she was starting to acknowledge that, you know what, I'm being used. I mean, what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, and I think she was in therapy by that time, so she
Yes,
talked
she was.
about it
Yes.
more. Yeah, and I think, from what I learned from my therapist that I saw, it's like connecting more to my body and what my body is telling me, instead of like, oh, what she really means is that, and oh, if I do this, then that, and this and that,
Yes.
and then I'm
Yes.
afraid if she does this, blah blah blah. It's like, you know what? This does not feel good in my body,
Yes.
and that's enough for me to be able to say no. And I think
Yes.
in that moment, it was like a sense of boom, like falling into her
Yes.
body. Like, I'm not going to talk myself out of this one. This just doesn't feel right.
Right. Like she was really starting to open up to her true self, in my
Yeah.
opinion. Like she really knew that this was not the right situation for her to do. So I want to address how important is it to have a sense of purpose when healing. I think if Davy hadn't come into her life, I
Mhm,
don't know what would have happened to her. But I
mhm,
think, her going back to art school, you
mhm,
know, embracing a hobby, something that she always enjoyed doing. Because to be honest with you, her employment situation was it was terrible. It was her boss had some nice things about her. I will say that, but
Right.
but like her aunt had told her, you're nothing more than a maid.
Yeah, yeah.
So, you know, I think having Davy brought the best out in her. Like I need to improve myself so I can take care of this child. I can, he won't be like me. The whole camp thing, the
Mhm,
things that he wanted to embrace. So I'd like you to address that. Having
mhm.
a sense of purpose when healing, how important is that?
Yeah, I was thinking too, vulnerability and purpose,
Yes.
because it takes a lot. It took a lot for her to try that photography class.
Yes, it did.
you had to be very vulnerable. Knowing the experiences that she had in high school and being teased and bullied, the classroom would cause anxiety. And yet she
Yes.
still made herself vulnerable enough to take the class. She made
Yes.
herself vulnerable enough to try therapy, which a lot of people will not do. You have to be
Yes.
vulnerable to say I need help and look for a therapist. And if that one doesn't work out, try another one, you know?
Yes.
Takes a lot of
Yes.
vulnerability for that too.
And
And
vulnerability is not weakness.
exactly. Exactly, because she went to the class, she got the therapist, all those things. So, and she didn't give up on Davy like you were saying. A lot of people would have been like, this kid is weird or whatever and gone her own way. But she opened up her home to him, etc. So, I think I don't know why. For me right now, as I'm thinking out loud, it kind of goes hand in hand in some weird way, purpose and vulnerability.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I
So,
agree. I agree. Because when you think back to what happened to her in her first class, her getting there late,
mhm.
and all that happened to her, that whole embarrassment, but she still stuck it out. And then it turned out that she was actually very good, right?
Mhm.
So I think that, her going to therapy, her being vulnerable, it helped her to become confident eventually. She
Yeah.
started to see that I'm actually talented at doing something else. And, I would actually like to stick with it. So even
Yeah.
when Jeanette tried to badmouth that whole thing, she could see that Jeanette was manipulating her, and
Mhm.
she could, she was starting to get the bad vibes there.
Mhm. Mhm. Yes, her confidence grew. Yeah, you're right. And another thing I'm thinking too, it's like she was vulnerable enough to show her artwork to a class of strangers.
Yes.
So, yeah, I think vulnerability, which is like honesty, is another thing that's really important on healing
Yes.
journeys.
Yes, definitely. And I just love how the progression of Francine, to see her going from being a victim to like coming
Mm,
into her own, standing her own ground. I love how when Aunt Leanne comes back in her life, and then Aunt Leanne, she goes right back to where they were before. Then she was like, "Get out of my house. I don't want
mhm.
to have anything to do with you. Get out." I
Mhm.
mean, let's talk about when a person that build up and you get to that point where you're just like, enough, enough.
Mhm. Mhm. I guess it just is a testament to her growth at that point, because there's no way she would have done that even in the middle of the
No,
book.
she wouldn't. there's
Let
there's
alone
no way. There's no way.
yeah, yeah. And I think Aunt Leanne backing off is like the bully can sense who they can bully in a way.
Right.
You
And
know?
I think then she realized that she had gone too far.
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah. So I don't know. Do you have anything to say about that?
I just think that, and I think we've all been there. We have that relative or friend that we love and admire,
Yeah.
and we take their word as gospel truth. But then it's like sometimes, I may not agree with what you're saying. And maybe to you, what I'm doing is not right, but at least let me figure it out. Stop
Yeah.
trying to come and take over and tell me you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. I'm right, I'm right, I'm right. I mean, that gets pretty old. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, yeah. The word respect is coming to mind. Like
Yes,
friends, relatives, parents, you have to have mutual respect on some level.
I agree. That's something, especially as a parent, that I have had to learn.
Mhm.
With my children, it's like they're early 30s now,
Mhm.
but in my mind, I still see them as being the little children
Right.
that I
Right.
raised. So it's
Right.
like I've had to learn when to back off. I've had to learn not to keep throwing in my opinion. I've had to learn to, hey, if you come to me for advice, then I can try to help you, but I'm not going to try to force you to listen to me. I
Mm.
had to learn to respect boundaries.
Mm.
I've had to learn, like, if I call you and you don't answer, then that's telling me, it may break my heart. but you don't want to be bothered right now. I have to respect that, and that's a pretty hard thing to do. But I think we have to learn to respect boundaries.
Yeah. We have to respect each other. You have to respect someone's journey. You might not
Yes,
like it, but it's their journey, you know?
it's true.
You know?
It's true. And let's talk about mental illness. When a
Mm,
person is struggling with mental illness, we have to remember it's mental
thank
illness.
you.
It's
Thank
mental
you.
illness.
Thank
We
you.
have to respect where they are. It's not how
Right.
someone else would do it. But when a person is having that mental breakdown, or they have a disorder, or whatever it is, you know, there are tactful ways to try to address them, maybe getting some help, or what can I do to help you.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
calling people names or making them feel, because this is a thing, and tell me if I'm wrong, Renee, when a person is struggling with mental illness, they they all may have their concerns about being labeled as being crazy, being mad, you know, they have that internal struggle. Trust me, I've been there. And it's like you're trying your very best to maintain. It doesn't help when you feel pressured. I mean, what's your opinion on that?
Mhm. Yeah, for sure, for sure. For me, I always think it's kind of like I go to because I meditate and knowing what my mind is like, I can only bring up the word empathy again, empathize with someone where you can't calm your mind and
Yes.
the torture that must be like, you
Yeah.
know? So gentleness, listening, patience, I don't know what more you can do. And like hinting at might need some help or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the word guilt is coming to mind because I think back to Francine and Aunt Leanne telling her mom, "Hey, you need to start working out. You need to get out of the house. You
Yeah.
need to do
Yeah.
this. You need to
Right.
do that." And then
Right.
look at what it led to.
That's right.
That guilt, that burden of guilt, like Francine asking herself, what if I just left her alone? Why did I push
Yeah.
her? So she was carrying a heavy burden.
Mhm, mhm. And we don't know what Aunt Leanne was feeling either because she's so armored. Her wall
Yes,
is up, surely
yes,
she's breaking down in one way or the other. But
yes.
that's that exterior that some people keep.
It's true. It's true.
They
And I
can't
think
go there.
it's true. It's true. I think her coming in, trying to help her niece, it's like wishing that she could do for her. She was trying to
Mhm.
do for her niece what she couldn't do for her sister.
That's true.
You
That's
know,
good. I didn't think of that. That's a good point.
you know, Renee, I have to say, it's like it wasn't completely my story, but then it was my story, because it helped me to relive some things that I needed to relive and
Mhm.
to, sort them out and clear them out. And, I was sharing with a friend the other night, you know, the way she was telling her mom, you need to get out, you need to do this, you need to do that. Well, before my son passed away, we would have our little ups and downs sometimes. He was an adult living at home. And I remember getting really angry with him. And I remember telling him, your ass will be out of here in January. And guess what? He dies in January.
Mm.
So that was something that ate me alive. I had
Mm.
to do a lot of praying to
Mhm.
overcome that. I will say, by the grace of God, two
Mhm.
weeks before he passed away, I called him and my daughter into my room to have a talk with them about what I wasn't very pleased with. And, I said, the first thing I said to him was, I would never put my children out. I would never put my children out. So don't let that worry you. And we had a
Mhm.
long talk, and he
Oh, good.
actually came and hugged me. He came and hugged
Oh my
me. He
god.
hugged me. And that was
Oh,
the last time he hugged me. because
Wow.
he died 2 weeks later. And in that conversation, because I remember saying to him, it's time for you to get a job, you have to get yourself together. But he wanted to focus on writing, and he
Mm,
said his words were, just give me, I just need a little more time, mom, I need a little more time.
mm,
And I
mm,
look back and it's like time that he didn't have.
mm,
So
mm,
that's why I could really relate to Francine. She
mm,
had good intentions because she saw what her mom needed to do. But I think sometimes we can't force our will on others. Sometimes I think we have to let God be God,
mhm,
because sometimes I think we try to play that role in the life of others. And
mhm,
I am learning now, like with my children, because I see their struggle in missing their brother. But at
mhm,
the end of the day, all I can do is pray for them because, like, I've done the work in therapy and I still struggle, you know? And it's like I've learned I can't judge their process, you know? When we judge the process of others, it's disrespectful. Let's talk about that. What's
mhm.
your opinion on that?
That's a good word. It's disrespectful. I mean, when I see people who are controlling, I just think you wouldn't want anyone to do that to you. It's kind of as simple as that. It's like, I know people are trying to be helpful, but no one likes to be controlled that way,
Yes.
you know? I'm going to steal a quote. It's the near enemy of love is control. It's like close to love,
Yes.
but it's actually the enemy of love,
I agree.
you know?
I agree. I
Yeah.
agree.
And
No
then
one. Mhm.
go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Again, it's always, to me, it's like, well, what's going on internally? What happened? What's going on internally that you aren't doing A, B, and C? Because it's not about necessarily A, B, and C. It's about what's going on underneath that, because the subconscious is guiding all of that. So, like, where do you need to be healed? What's going on?
Yes, exactly, exactly, exactly. I'm telling you, healing can be complicated. It's not an easy journey, but everyone has to heal in their own way. I think it's okay to make a suggestion to someone, but you can't hammer them over the head. Well, this worked for me, so it
Yeah.
has to work for you. That's just not. That's
Listen to it.
that's not how it works. I mean, that's just not how it works. It's just like I had to learn with my kids. Like, I talk about God a lot, but I had to learn, like, you know, I love God, and I know that they may have love for God too, but it's like I try to be careful. Like, I never want to feel like I'm beating someone over the head with the Bible. And I
Yeah,
think so many of us can be guilty of that. I
yeah,
think there are ways for us to let our light shine without overdoing it and
yeah,
without, us turning others off.
yeah,
So it's like because I think of Aunt Leanne, like I said,
yeah,
well intentioned, but she overdid it in what she tried to say to her niece. And yeah, the altar and all that stuff was weird, but
yeah,
that was her mom. So it's like when you were when saying that is weird, it's like you're saying her mom is weird.
yeah,
Even
yeah,
though her mom had some issues, right? So
yeah,
it's like it's how we say things and what we say. I think we have to be very careful.
yeah. And you can like spout Bible verses and this and that, but at the end of the day, it's like it's not what you say, it's how you are, and
Yes.
who you are quietly when people are
Yes.
watching, and also
Yes.
a sense of warmth. Like,
Yes,
you
definitely.
want to be around warmth and kindness.
Yes. Yeah, think about it. If you've experienced the trauma and the
Mm,
bullying that Francine experienced, trauma, that was like her story. Trauma, 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 trauma. There were times throughout the book I was like, man, if I knew Francine, I would just want to give her a hug.
mm,
Because you believe in your heart that's exactly what she would want. Or just say, you know what, if you need to cry, just cry. I'll hold your hand, I'll hug you and let you
that's
cry.
right.
You
That's
know?
right. And
I
then,
mean, yeah.
listening to you, I just think even putting it on a societal level, it's like you leave the house, like when she goes to work or whatever, you're experiencing trauma on a certain level.
And you,
you know,
once again, it's like
pride
that was her
level.
whole life.
Yeah, so it's like a lot of us, we just want to come home and feel a sense of home and safety, not more judgment, harshness, and da da
It's
da
true.
da da da. Da. You want to
Yeah,
feel
no,
safe.
it's
You want to
true.
feel,
It's true. It's true. I mean, my heart just broke for her character. So to see her develop and to see where she ended
yeah.
up, it was a beautiful thing. I have to address her reconciliation with her aunt and her uncle. I think it was beautiful that her aunt got to the place where she had to see. And I
Mhm.
think Uncle CJ had a lot to do with, like, basically, look, it's time for you to shut up, woman, and just let
Because we're
this
gonna
girl
lose
be.
Francine if yeah.
Right?
I'm so glad you picked up on that because I don't think that's exactly like specifically in the book,
But
In my head,
that's
right,
how
okay.
I took it, because I'm like, you know what, she was very overbearing, but at the end of the day, the fact that she kept on calling and reaching out, it spoke volumes of her love for her niece. Some
Yeah,
people love, but I think they just don't know how to show it.
yeah. Because I think one time when she called, which was great, she just started berating her right away, and then I think that's
Exactly.
her love. So
So
it's
she
like
didn't get it. She didn't
she
get
didn't
it.
get it. She didn't get it till near the end. Yeah.
Yeah, she didn't get it. So it was nice, because I think it was great for her to have her uncle and her aunt back in her life. But I think for Davy, it
Mm,
was also beautiful for him to have them also. So it was nice to see that, towards the end, everything coming together. Now, something that I would like to address is like knowing when it's time to walk away. Like,
mm,
she had to make some tough choices in the end, knowing who her friends were and who her friends were not, knowing
yeah.
that, you know what, I'm not trying to buy love. I'm not trying to be in any more bad situations. I'm going to focus on this kid. I
Yeah.
mean, because a lot of us get stuck, and like, I was married for, I want to say, 25 years, and I shouldn't have been married for more than 4, if I'm to be honest. And it felt more like a prison sentence than a marriage, honestly.
Mhm,
So it's like overstaying,
mm.
living a life of misery, something that our kids are witness to, you
You
know.
said I was just thinking that, and then you see their behavior and you wonder why.
Yes,
It's
yeah,
like, it's growing up in a soup of you might not be even arguing, out and out, but you pick up on all of
the
that.
tension is
It's
there.
yeah.
The tension,
Yeah,
right? What's that saying, when it's the tension is so thick you can cut it with a
that's
knife?
right.
So think about it. So kids have to sense that,
Yeah,
right? Kids
yeah.
have to sense that.
And I think going back to purpose, it's kind of like Francine, like you were saying, she could now give Davy the home she never had, and she knew how
Right.
to do that, you know?
Yes. She had the tools.
Mhm.
Yeah, she definitely had the tools. Now let's talk about allowing ourselves to heal, not because we know we have to heal or we need to heal, but because we know we deserve to heal.
Ooh, you speak on that. That was beautiful. We deserve to heal. Ooh, I love that. I love
I
that.
mean,
I don't think
self-love,
I've ever heard it put it that way.
self-love, I think, something I've shared on my podcast, Renee, is that as I have been on this journey and I really understood that God loved me, God's love allowed me to love myself,
Mm,
because I felt like He has shown me what love is. And
mm,
in me loving myself, it's helped me now to love others the way I should love them. I don't love them as they are possessions,
mm,
like I own them, because I love you, you have to be. No, it's like I've understand how to love now. So I think, coming from that place where it comes to like healing, I used to think when bad things happened to me, it was because I deserved it.
mm.
And I know nothing could be further from the truth. But how many people are
I
stuck
know.
because of that mindset,
No.
right? That mindset. But it's like, we all deserve healing. I think we all deserve to feel loved. I think we all deserve to respect, but we can't just want it for ourselves. We have to be able to give it to others. So, I mean, what's your take on the whole healing journey?
I think you just said it. And I think the love that you felt allowed you to love others freely because you felt that love freely, you
Yes.
know? So I think that's it. You have to find that way of finding that kind of love for yourself because
Yes.
it's just too difficult to love others.
It's true, and I think we have to be open to it,
Mm,
because I was actually afraid of love. I didn't, I've been hurt so much in
mm,
life, but
mhm,
it's like as time has gone on, because of where I am now, I have my boundaries there now. It's like I'm not pushing people away, but I know I'm not supposed to let everyone into my life. You
mhm,
know, I know that I have to guard my heart, but I know at the same time I can't think that all men are bad or all women are bad or all friends or family. I have to give people a chance.
mhm,
So, reading your book, Renee, I have to say it was a journey, and I emailed you after, and it was like a journey that I didn't know that I needed,
uh,
because like I said, those tears, I needed to cry those tears, to see myself and Francine in some of those situations, but my desire to see her heal, my desire to see good things happen to her, because it's like what I would want for myself.
mm,
And going through therapy, it helped me to see, okay, I have made some progress, but I still need to be in therapy. I don't want, because I stopped going at one point, then I went back, because it's like when I start to feel that little, that it's like, okay, it's time to go and get filled up again and get back
right.
on track, right?
Nothing wrong with the checkup.
Right. It's important. It's definitely important. So I'll say to my viewers again, the book is a little spicy. It is. But, I think back to some of the books I read in English literature class. It's no stronger than any of those.
Okay,
I'll put it
yeah.
like that. I'll put it like that. But it's like I love to read, Renee. I love to read,
Oh,
and
you're
I
I
love
can
to read
tell you're
books that
yeah,
open
yeah,
my
you're a good
mind.
reader, yeah.
And I feel like this book really broadened my horizons.
I
It
love that.
helped me as far as empathy, really learning not to judge, because a person could be on their last. Think about it. Francine was ready to commit suicide. It's like, would you want to know it was your unkind words or your unkind actions that
Mm.
pushed someone over the edge?
Ooh, that's true, that's
You
true,
know?
that's true.
So, yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm telling you, your book, and I will say, I loved Please, Please, Please. That will always be one of my
You're so
favorites.
sweet.
And I'm looking forward to reading your other books. I'm looking forward to read, but this book, Francine's, that crash and burn, I can relate to.
Aw,
I can truly relate to it in so many ways. So I just want to thank you for
thank
being
you.
a part of my healing journey.
Thank you. Sweet. This was wonderful. Thank you I'm so glad you contacted me.
Me too. And listen, Renee, I would love to have you back.
Oh, I would love
I would be asking you to come back for sure. And,
that.
what are your closing thoughts for this evening?
I just want to say how much I appreciate you and you sharing and you creating this podcast and you taking people on your healing journey and helping them to feel less alone, helping them to feel seen. Because you and others have every right to put walls up, and we see these people with their walls. We keep going back to Aunt Leanne,
Yes,
and that keeps joy away, that
I
keeps
agree.
love away because you're trying so hard to protect, but you, like, right from your emails, have just been so open and so kind, and I just appreciate you.
Renee, I
That's
say
your
I
closing
appreciate you. It's like, honestly, just to think back to our first connection over 20 years ago.
thought.
And it's like, I just feel so blessed. Like I said, it was through your first book.
Mm,
that we met. So I am definitely looking forward to having you back. And like I said, for those who are on a healing journey, and you want to get in touch with what you're feeling. I think Francine is a great character to relate to. Like I said, I read the book, and listen, I know that some people are uncomfortable with certain things, certain subject matter. But at the end of the day, I can tell you that this book brought healing to my heart.
mm,
I just feel like it was a blessing to read it. And I think if we would just look at the world that way without the judgment and condemnation of others because they don't think the way we think, I
mhm.
think the world will be a better place, honestly. And I know it sounds like a little cliche, but
Oh, but
we
yeah,
need to be
yeah,
open.
yeah. Because the other way sure isn't getting us anywhere,
Yeah,
And you speak of
true.
God's love, and you know, I have a different faith, but it's like love. It's like the essence of love. There's no room for judgment.
Right. Exactly. And I just think that, you know, if I'm how am I going to let my light shine if my heart is filled with hatred?
Mm,
So
wow,
that is where I'm coming from. I don't want to proclaim Christianity and you don't see Christ in me,
wow.
right? So that's the thing. So like I said, I love this book. It
Mm,
was honestly, like I said, I shed tears
mm,
because it helped me as far as healing. I could see because I suppressed my grief for a long time, because I was criticized for grieving. It's like you should be over it by now. And, you know, Francine helped me to see, you know, it's like letting it go. But I could see on her journey where I had been. So like I said, you covered so much in this, and it's kind of shocking to know it wasn't intentional.
I know. I was just following the characters along. Yeah, yeah.
Brilliant, brilliant job, Renee. Once again, thank you so
You.
much.
Thank
I'd like
you.
to wish the viewers a
Yeah,
blessed
thanks
week.
for stopping
And
by.
and I tell you that I would definitely love for you to come back. So
That'd be
once
great.
again, thank you so
Thank
much. And like I said,
you,
it's been
Bree.
a blessing.
Thank you. I
Good
can't wait
night,
to meet you in
everyone.
person. Good night.
Yes, oh yes,
Yes,
that would be really nice. Renee, like I feel like I've known you for a long
I
time. So
know. I just want to give you a hug.
it's been great. So take care, everyone. Have a blessed week.
Yes, have a